I want to welcome everybody to today's TS2 Cloud Office Hours. This is your opportunity as Microsoft partners to ask Microsoft employees direct questions about anything to do with Microsoft Cloud. Today we are focusing on some of the technologies associated with our social media strategy, and with me on the call is Jen Pettit. Jen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I am the US SMB Office and Office 365 scorecard lead. So any questions about any of the Office or Office 365 products I can help with.
Okay, and just so people on the call understand, what's a scorecard lead mean to Microsoft?
So scorecard lead means I work with all the different teams in sales and marketing and product and make sure that all the feedback is getting back to the product team and that any new releases or anything coming out and campaigns are getting out to all of the relevant sales and marketing teams and thus to the partners and to customers.
So I look at you as being a connection point is how that works for me, is when I've got questions that I can't answer, I go to Jen and she gets me answers, is what it boils down to.
Yes, I can
do
that.
Thank you very much, Jen. And just for those of you who haven't been introduced to me, my name's Steve Deming, Mid-Atlantic Partner Technology Strategist. My job is to help partners like you understand where Microsoft technology is today, where it's going in the future, and ultimately how to better engage with Microsoft. I work in conjunction with a number of the East Region partner business managers, Asia Hill and Dennis Simmons and Gail Corey and Chris Larger, some of the people I get to work with. So with that, let's go ahead and first of all, make sure that everybody understands today is designed to be an interactive session. We want you to ask questions. You're welcome to ask questions via the chat on the side. We'll also open it up for the phone lines towards the end of the session, but just asking a question there on the side is fine at any time. We'll go ahead and do our best to answer them in a couple of blocks during the day. We want to make sure that this is viewed as being an open opportunity for you to ask questions, and so anything is fair game as far as we're concerned. If we don't feel we can answer it on the call, we will certainly defer it and make sure that you have a way of contacting us so that we can address those questions after the call. So Jen, you ready to get started?
Definitely, let's go.
Okay, so with that, we're going to, like I said, today is all about at least our structured content is all about social media tools. And I'm going to be honest with you, I turned 50 a few years ago, and social media tools are a bit foreign to me. I mean, this is kind of a battle for me. I'm used to faxes and email's okay, but I like that written communication. All of this newfangled instant messenger and stuff like that, it takes me a little while to get used to it. And I mean, we're moving at the speed of light with these technologies. We've integrated more of these technologies, I swear, in the last year than we have prior to this. And it's actually quite refreshing that these technologies are being brought in such a way that even people like myself feel comfortable enough to use them and get a hold of them. But we wanted to start by just providing a little bit of background that frankly we a lot of us from business over the years, a lot of us have built up a structure within our organizations, within our friends and so forth, a structure that if we have a particular question and we know that there's an answer to that question somewhere out there, we go through a very formalized process of figuring out how to get from where we are to where they are so that connection can be made. And the reality is that this is a set of technologies that we want to make sure are changing the way we do this communication, that our communication doesn't have to be the same way that it's always been, because frankly the world has become a giant network of interrelated, interconnected mechanisms, whether they be formalized tools like Facebook and LinkedIn or informal mechanisms just between you and your friends via some new app of the day. Bottom line is, we're discovering as people, we're discovering new ways of communicating and new ways of communicating information that truly were not available to us just years ago. And so we need to make sure that we're helping our customers understand how these technologies relate to their world. And frankly, to help get that started, we wanted to put a framework around this, and so this is the framework that, as I was researching for this presentation, this is a framework that it resonated with me, and so I thought I'd introduce it to you, so that if you were trying to bring up social media to your customers, perhaps you might look at using one or a few of these slides to help with that framework. And the framework is really that we need to understand that the new social media mechanisms, it works like a network. But we're really trying to accomplish three goals here. Listen to what is important, adapt so that we can make smarter decisions, and ultimately this is targeted to grow our business. And that's the interesting thing about this, is we have to remember that these tools in the context of business are all about making the business better. I think about, for myself, I have a Rita's, and for those of you not familiar with what Rita's is, it's a frozen ice establishment. And I've got a Rita's that's literally 3 or 4 blocks away from me. It's a little too dangerously close. I like the flavors, and I like the frozen ice. But one of the challenges that I face is, what's their flavors today? Because they change their flavors every day. And frankly, social media becomes that mechanism. And I've heard of similar things like with the food trucks in New York and in Los Angeles. They've started tweeting out the where they're located. Rita's tweets out what their flavor of the day is, or flavors of the day. Point is, using social media to ultimately help grow our business, adapting it to what we need and helping it grow our business. So how do we structure that? Well, it turns out that, frankly, Microsoft does a little research around these things, and that we find that there are high percentages of people who listen, not as much that really has figured out how to adapt their business to that, to improving their business through that collaboration, but everybody is interested pretty much in making sure that we can get that growth accomplished. And so what I liked about this particular set of slides is that it gave a little narrative of how these pieces fit together, so that if you're trying to explain this to your customers, you can help make it a little bit more real for them. And in this case, a person working for an organization, his name's Jimmy, notices customer sentiment trending on a particular issue, and taking that trend, Jimmy leverages his Microsoft Dynamics CRM to alert other members of his team using Yammer to what this is, what some of the choices might be as far as that's concerned. Someone else on the team responds to that accordingly, perhaps posting some information into OneDrive, ultimately being able to derive a view of a roadmap of how a correction could be made, leveraging work by other individuals found via something called Office Graph and Delve. And we'll get into those tools in a little bit further detail. Adapting is taking that and really making sure that we can ultimately make a smarter business decision. So how do we capture some of that information to generate a business case? How do we then make sure that business case gets presented to our peers or the decision makers within the organization, so that ultimately a decision is made, changes are requested, in this case with manufacturing, and that ultimately manufacturing, when they buy into this, sign off, and the process moves forward. And that's making sure the organization adapts to these changes, which leads us ultimately to the growth. And in the growth, it's being able, well, frankly, in my mind, it's being able to repeat this, but in this case, it's being able to start a sustainable clothing line, a production on a sustainable clothing line, making sure that new and existing customers are notified about this, and that ultimately we see a change in our sales. And so whether you take the trite little example that I've provided, or the examples of the food trucks, or something that's more structured like this, I think one of the most important things that you recognize about social media is it is about how we're going to help change or help facilitate change within your organization, be based on consumer and customer feedback being brought into the organization, being adapted to meet the needs of the organization, and ultimately deliver growth for the organization in one form or another. That's how you want to be positioning it to your customers. Of course, that's how we're going to be positioning it to you. So it's all about doing that. And there are a couple of case studies that we included in this deck. One from Westfield Mall. This is how they solicit and listen to customer sentiment and customer feedback. For those of you not familiar, Westfield is an organization that owns malls around the country, and they facilitate the management of those malls. And so how do they solicit that feedback? How do they ultimately share feedback from one mall to another so that they all improve? Red Robin is an example of adapting, changing the way they did their business in weeks rather than months, due to based on customer feedback and based on the business practices that had been established. And then we've got one more on Xerox, and how Xerox has used its unique capability for innovation to grow and make their organization more established in the modern business world, based on that customer feedback, based on how they changed their organization, ultimately turning it into growth for the business. So I just wanted to make sure that you had access to some of those slides, because frankly, that's one of the biggest challenges, at least for me, when I go to talk social media, is how to get the conversation started. In other words, what am I really talking about, and how do I provide a structure around it so that the people who are listening to me understand this there is structure to this, and that there is a method to the madness, and there is a way to get from point A to point B to point C, but I need to provide a structure, or I need to at least introduce a structure. And like I said, it helped me to see that structure. So with that, Jen, and I'm just going to throw you under the bus here. Are there any social media scenarios that you would like to bring up? Things where you've seen social media either change other people's behavior, or maybe even change your behavior in how you purchase and how you look at things.
Well, definitely, social media is great for taking awareness in both directions. Not only is it great for companies to be able to get to the end customer and make them aware of what's going on, updates that are going, if there's been concerns with different device releases, and there's different bugs and systems. It's great because then customers also then can make the company aware of issues, give their feedback, so then the company can go back and make fixes. And what's great is with the current Office testing. So Office Universal is out there, and Office Desktop for technical previews and public previews. So a lot of customers can download the Office 2016 and work through real live scenarios, and then our product team gets the feedback of bugs and things that need to get fixed before we ship out the end product. And that way, when we do ship out the product, it is as useful and bug-free as we can make it.
Excellent. Well, and I think that's a great example that we're using some of our own social media tools to collect feedback on our products that are in preview. I think that's an excellent example, and we're doing the same thing with both the Windows 10 desktop as well as the Windows Server. So we see benefit for ourselves. So thanks for that insight. So what are some of the tools that we see fall into this space? And I know that Jen and I were brainstorming this before the call today, just thinking about the various Microsoft tools that are out there. And we have a few slides around some of the tools. We've got some demos set up for some of the other tools. But I know for myself, Yammer was one of the first tools that sort of kicked off this big trend to change. Jen, what are some of the other tools that you have that you've identified as being members of that social media group within the Microsoft product line?
The ones I use the most are Office Mix, Sway, and Delve.
Wow. Okay. And so, so a little Yammer
together.
from me, a little Office Mix and Sway and Delve from you. That's excellent. So let's provide the audience some definitions for a few of these tools. So for me, and since I brought up Yammer, I'll go ahead and introduce Yammer. Yammer is, in my mind, and I know that they don't like it when we use these analogies, but it really works for me. It's a corporate-based Facebook. It's a Facebook that stays inside the corporation. A lot of people understand and appreciate what Facebook delivers as far as an experience and as far as sharing of information is concerned. But one of the challenges that businesses face is, well, that's a little too much sharing. And I think about an organization like Microsoft. I am in a great position with the company. I get to go every 6 months to internal technical training where we get to talk directly to the product groups, and it's a week of nothing but just brain dump of where we're going with our technology and what the technology has to offer, and really what we're trying to accomplish with it. The problem is, I'm not allowed to share that information outside of the organization for weeks, if not months, after I've received the information. Yet I want to share it with my peers, because my peers we need to exchange this information. So if we use a public tool like Facebook, we're in violation of corporate policy. We're potentially exposing internal private information in an external forum, and that's not allowed. Yammer, on the other hand, can be controlled. Yammer, we can control what is externally exposed, what's kept internal, and effectively we set up internal lines of communication using Yammer to help make sure that we can communicate that information clearly and cleanly without violating the corporate rules. Some of the other nice things about Yammer is that you can subscribe to it, so you can be notified when things pop up. You can put in not just text information, but you can put in attachments, and they can be big attachments. So all of a sudden, limits like that 10 megabyte PowerPoint limitation goes away, because you can put in 50 and 60 megabyte attachments inside of your Yammer. And even if you join a conversation thread late, you can still see the entire conversation thread. It's not something that you had to have been part of from the very beginning. You can join it after the conversation has begun, but still catch up on that. So that's one of the things that I like about Yammer. So I'm interested, Jen. Pick one of the products that you just rattled off and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, one of the ones that works well on top of Yammer's Sway. So that's a new one that's come out, and it's a very easy tool that you can kind of build web pages. And what I like about it is you can take presentations, or you can take previously developed documents and just upload them into Sway and move them around, change them around, and then you can share them out easily. Right now, and in the future, you can share it through Facebook, you can share it through Yammer, or you can just share it by sending links to your group. It's a fun way to be able to get presentations. I do monthly business reviews, and so instead of just having a basic email of saying, here is what we did the past month, I can kind of make it a little more fun and change it up a little.
So while you were talking about that, Jen, I went ahead and brought up a browser session. Hopefully you're able to see that. Did a quick Bing search for Sway and went to the Sway official site. So is this where you got started with Sway? Is just going to our public site?
Right there.
Right there. And so what's it says it's a presentation tool. How do you have a rule of thumb when you would use, say, a PowerPoint versus a Sway? How do you differentiate the two? I've got my own differentiation, but do you have a differentiation?
Sway is definitely more when you are just presenting. So you're not trying to get people through learning. Like it's not great for saying like a demo presentation. It's great when you are wanting to share a story or share business information.
Okay.
Personally, it's great for sharing, like if you want to do like a photo book. And it's great. It's very easy to put in pictures and graphs and then text along with it.
Well, and I think I like that sharing a story, because I mean you can put a story with PowerPoint, but Sway really encourages a story. And if you've not gone and looked at the Sway site, I strongly recommend that you scroll down just a little bit. There are I guess 22 different Sways that they have out there, and this is purely for entertainment, but the one that I always start with is the Red Panda Sway, because it's a very bold, very graphic look. But as you go into the Sway itself, it becomes very structured and lets me see information about this red panda, the little critter, and it shows how the Sway can help deliver the story and graphically present it. And I know I'm moving through it probably too fast for the Skype for Business experience to really show up clearly, but it's all about being able to communicate that story. And there are different ways that you can communicate it, right? You can do it horizontally and vertically and things like that.
Well, and what's great is also when you are, it's good for these types of things where you've got a picture and a one-to-one text. But what's great about it for presentations is that in PowerPoint, you have the slide by slide, so your conversation can get cut off as you move through the slides. Whereas in Sway, you can set it up so it's basically one flow. It just flows all the way through the information.
So you're thinking let's see, I saw one that I liked, was it the Universe, I think, perhaps, that as you're going across, is that what you mean by that? It's
Yep.
that you're just able to keep going and it brings the information up?
Right, and so when you are seeing this on your computer, it isn't as choppy, so it's a nice, soft, it's just basically everything is on one long web page. That's what it looks like.
And that is kind of cruel that I'm trying to do a Sway through a Skype session or a Skype for Business session, so it's all going through my home bandwidth. So okay, I appreciate what you're telling me there to get people to go look at Sway directly, but if they just go to sway.com, they can see that. So helping customers understand that this is a media tool for communicating the story, not so much necessarily structured presentation type information, but to help communicate the entire story, that's a good place for Sway to come into the social media experience.
And there was a quick question about who the audience would be for Sway, and that is the audience that you make it. It can be used for internal team meetings. It can be used to help marketing. If you have different Office 365 or different things that you want to promote to customers, it gives that you can send out the file to them or embed it on your website, so that you have easily made marketing materials that you can customize and create directly for your customers.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that insight and Sway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head back to the PowerPoint for a moment, and I'm going to go. Whoops. Of course, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm going to go back to my content. And I wanted to bring up a little bit around Delve and the Office Graph. And I know that demos are always more interesting, but I also felt that because of the way Office Graph and Delve work, I thought a little bit of structure around this might be useful. So bottom line is, with Delve and the Office Graph, we've got content in all kinds of places. And one of the challenges when we have content in all kinds of places is how do we find related content, and how do we extrapolate content that's not just our content, but content that might be other people's, and find the relationships to other people's content. And so from a structured point of view, we have an underlying technology underneath Office and Office 365 5, which we call Office Graph. And the goal of Office Graph is to help us connect with the documents and the people and the other forms of media that might very well help us derive information out of all of that information that's surrounding us. And so it's taking that information and making sure that we understand that there are relationships between that information, that some of that information is private, some of that information is public, some of that information is available to us, and frankly, some of the information isn't available to us. It's just giving us access and giving us structure in finding that information. And then once finding that information, recognizing that the information that we find technically ties us to other people and other forms of information, and that this is a giant network of information that surrounds each and every one of us. So any one document and any one project and any one person leads to far more other relationships, and the purpose of Office Graph is to help us find those relationships, find that information, and then using Delve ultimately deliver to us a way of viewing that information so that we can start consuming it. Just some technical components behind the scenes. The Office Graph technology does provide some content schema information, so there's information about the people and the documents and what kind of media it is and what kind of relationships it has. Ultimately, we then use what are referred to as signals to determine your interaction with those various forms of content, whether you're opening them or saving them, and that helps set priorities and set relationships between that information, which ultimately then feeds that information into a mechanism that lets us view it. As mentioned in the slide here, we do respect public and private information for both the signals as well as the content, so that you can't see information, you can't even get signals on information that you don't have rights to view. That's a very important thing. Ultimately, though, we want to deliver that information in a form that's easy to consume, so that you can see information about what you've found, so that you can see little thumbnail information and then drill into that information deeper into more detail. That's the discovery phase of this, and ultimately Delve helps deliver that experience both to a desktop as well as to a mobile device point of view. So Jen, experiences that you've had with Office Graph and Delve?
With Delve, what I like is a lot of times, there's files that need to get updated maybe once a month or once a quarter, and a lot of times, they're on my to-do list and in my reminders box, but I don't always get to it. So it's great being able to go through Delve, and then you see that all of your coworkers are working on a file or adding and updating information, and it reminds me, oh, yeah, I got to go in there. And the other good part about that is a lot of times those files can move, and I know that I'm always updating the right one.
Excellent. Well, that's great, because then you're not spending all of that extra time trying to find the resource that is moved or find the person who moved the resource, and you're able to focus on the job at hand. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about Mix? Because I hadn't even thought about Mix when you brought it up earlier in the day.
I love Mix. It's a fun add-on for SharePoint or PowerPoint, and what's great about it is you can use it in two different ways. You can use it to put together presentations. So if we wanted to pre-record this presentation, we could go through and very easily add our audio, embed videos or pictures, and using tablets and touchscreens, we can go through and literally write on the presentation and point things out and share them. And it's just a much more easier way of doing animations, because I can make sure that it's done in time with my audio that I'm presenting. The other thing that I love using it for is actually just personal note-taking. So a lot of times I'll come across a campaign or a presentation that I want to make sure that I remember. It's for learning purposes, but a lot of times I need to put it into my own words so that I can reference it and understand it a lot easier. And so I'll go through and I'll record my own notes and be able to write things down and put it into my own voice so that it's easier for me to come back to.
Excellent. Well, and, actually, my wife uses Mix. She does uses PowerPoint for classes that she teaches at a local college, and so she of course has all of her decks and for all the classes she's going to teach, and she uses Mix to record a voice track for students who either miss a session or because sometimes there are language barriers, it gives her an opportunity to record things so that people can go back and listen to it as many times as they want until they get a better understanding, or at least get a better understanding of what they don't understand. But she uses the Mix and the annotation features within Mix to help her with that experience. So that's great. There any other tools that you wanted to bring up at this point, or I know that we've gone a little bit beyond our time, but I've got a couple more myself.
Go for it.
Okay. Well, so I know that officially we're not talking about some of the tools that we did promote on this webcast. So I'm going to just tell you that yes, Microsoft is working on other social media tools, things like Revolve, things like OneClip. And if you want more information on any tools that we didn't officially discuss during today's presentation, my recommendation is to pay attention to blogs that are out there, and one of the blogs that's highly respected is one by Mary Jo Foley. Take a look at that blog. It'll keep you one step ahead of your customers, because remember that's all that you need is to be one step ahead of them. But there is some interesting technology potentially coming down the pipe. Just I don't have any official word to talk about it, but I do know that there's information out there. OneClip being a clipboard that goes across devices and across technologies, so that you're able to clip from one technology and paste from another technology. That it's kind of like OneNote, but it's a little more interactive and a little more real time. And Revolve is all about looking at your particular social media connections and prioritizing information based on those social media connections. Anyway, more information can be found at the Mary Jo Foley blog. So with that, I just want to bring today's presentation, the formal portion of today's presentation, to a close. So, Jen, were there any closing thoughts from you?
No, nothing that I have.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to go ahead and just mention in an official fashion, next week is going to be on Office 365 and Azure compliance overview, the technologies and mechanisms associated with compliance in that. It will be same time on June the 2nd, 10 a.m. Pacific or 1 p.m. Eastern, and Barb and Jeff will be the hosts for that particular session. So if you have some interest in that space, please tune in. And what I want to do is spend the rest of the time that we've got today, we're going to stop the recording.